Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. It's Coram here, along with my colleague Ed Carson, and we've got a breakdown of the action in today's session, Tuesday, November 26th. Thanksgiving right around the corner, but we've still got some stock market action to break down, Ed.
That's right. And the major indexes did well, but it still felt like a mixed day. But a few stocks that did well were Amazon, Constellation Energy, and MercadoLibre.
Okay, well, we'll take a look at those stocks, but first, let's analyze the major indexes. And we want to start with a look at the NASDAQ here. An up day, up 0.6% after some stalling esque action, Ed, in Monday's session. We are now back above that 19,000 level. Also, taking a look at the S&P 500, up 0.6% on the day, back above that 6,000 mark. Meanwhile, the Dow up about 0.3%, extending its gains after clearing 44,000 once again earlier this week. But small caps, which had been leading a powerful move over the last couple of sessions, Ed, with the outsized decline today, down about 0.7%, but still some pretty massive gains that we've seen for small caps and mid caps lately.
Yeah, all the key indexes are at or near record highs. The Dow and S&P hit record highs today. Today, the major indexes rose in large part because of the mega caps, and we'll see some of the how that played out. But it's interesting. The markets seem to be taking a wait and see approach to Trump tariffs rather than a wait and hear approach because they heard that there's going to be big Trump tariffs on day one, but they're still wondering. It still felt like the markets are like, well, we'll see. They're still hopeful that maybe they won't be as large as maybe they were thought. And then they're hoping that there'll be the offsets of the tax cuts and deregulation, the positive things. So that didn't that effect of that. And treasury yields rose today, but only regaining some of yesterday's big drop. So while that may have sapped some of the non-mega cap strength, we'll take that 2-day combination of yields overall.
Exactly. So we looked at small caps. We can also pull up the mid caps as well with a very similar look. Here's MDY down about 0.5% today, but a big move in recent sessions, just like small caps. And then we also want to take a look at RSP. So looking underneath the surface, while the S&P was up 0.6% today, RSP, which is the equal weighted S&P, essentially flat on the day, Ed, which speaks to what you said about the mega caps really the ones in focus today or, taking the lead, it seemed.
A little bit today, and obviously you can look at how RSP looks versus S&P, and like it made a bigger move recently,
Right.
and the same can be said about QQEW, which actually fell today, but it's been outperforming the mega cap. So
Mhm.
today the mega caps led. They haven't so much in the past few days, but
Right.
back and forth. However you look at it, still everything is generally near highs, and you want to try to find the sectors and the stocks that are really leading, uh, but there's a lot of
Mhm.
rising tide lifting all boats, it feels like, overall the last several weeks.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let's check back in on the housing stocks because with the shifts that we've seen in interest rates, got a big boost yesterday, but now backing off again today. So, what do you make of this, Ed? The fact that we didn't get a follow up on Monday's strength. Of course, you do have that correlation to interest rates. So, not a surprise to see this here today.
Yeah, and it's also you can see, 4 really solid days if you combine all that. So we gave up some of that last day's gains. I mean, that's a pretty good situation. Look, if yields spike back up to the 10-year treasury yield moves back up to 4.5 or beyond, housing stocks are going to struggle because that's where the
Mhm.
10-year treasury yield paused. And it's not a real surprise. It's when the yields really started coming back down, that's when the housing started making a move again. So that's what it comes down to. There will be a lot of
Yep.
economic data tomorrow, so that could move things, but that's really what it I think comes down to. And there's also the tariffs are another factor. If we do raise tariffs by 20% on Canada, well, there's a lot of lumber there, and there's other things that could make housing more expensive relative to other things. So that could be a headwind. But again, it's hard to know how that's
Yeah.
going to play out.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Okay, let's check in on gold because we've seen some whipsaw action here lately, getting back above the 50-day line last week, backing off Monday, now holding pat. So we do have some levels to watch here, Ed, for gold.
Yeah, that I mean, it made a nice run. Again, it made a really nice run and then sold off after the election. Sort of the uncertainty was gone a little bit. It bounced back, but it needs to get above the 50-day line and probably above last week's high to really feel confident. And the problem is that whenever you start feeling confident about gold and when it's gone on a
Yeah.
run, that's when you start in things. So it's always you can always second guess, third guess yourself into doing something or not doing something when it's so related to interest rates and the economy.
hmm Okay, let's take a look at Bitcoin, the new gold here. Some might say, full disclosure, I do have a position in IBIT. I think some traders may have taken today and yesterday as a signal to trim back their positions, depending on your trading style, your time frame, all that kind of thing, Ed. But still, it's seen a nice move lately. But today, closing below the 10-day line with a decline of over 4%.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't mean it's going to be over. It could easily just it could pause at 50. It could pause, go rebound right back from here. It could rebound from 50, especially if it hits the 21-day line. Just look at this IBIT chart. It hasn't been around that long, but look at how many times it doesn't go very long without having like a 10, 15, 20% drawdown. I mean, obviously we've gone on a huge run, but there's lots of times when there've been some pretty significant declines. So that's it Bitcoin. I mean, you have
The
to
nature
know
of the
that. You
beast.
it's the nature of the beast. So you want to buy it right. If you bought it on the breakout or bought it, at an early entry, then there are times you can get it, but you just have to definitely if you bought it high, if you were trying to do some kind of swing trade, that didn't work. I mean,
Right.
that does and that happens, and then you have to decide, well, how much of the am I going to willing to give up? And you could decide I'm going to take off a portion, or I'm going to take off half, or I'm going to wait until it goes below the 21-day line. Just have a plan in place and then try to follow it rather than try to making emotional decisions on the fly.
Mhm. Exactly. Okay, let's go to Amazon. Ticker there, AMZN, the e-commerce giant and mega cap tech stock outperforming today, up 3.2%. So a nice rebound here for Amazon after a pullback over the last couple of weeks to some key support.
Yeah, it wasn't great to see the big high volume drops and on the pullback, especially that first one, a pretty sharp drop, and then the fact that it couldn't hold the 21-day line. But it has bounced back, whereas Nvidia is sort of stuck and isn't making progress back. This has bounced back. It regained the buy point, but it's like barely today. Clearly moved above it was clearly above the buy point, sort of breaking decisively this recent downtrend. So pretty nice action here. The earnings have been really strong. The revenue growth has been solid. I mean, e-commerce, cloud computing. I mean, you look around. There's a lot of e-commerce companies that are doing pretty well, and obviously cloud computing and AI. So this is the name you can be doing. It hasn't been a huge. You can see that relative strength line. It's still well off just the recent highs, let alone the consolidation highs. So you have to keep that in mind. Can it go another run? Can it lead? But it was definitely showing some solid action today for sure.
hmm And let's take a look at Constellation Energy. This is CEG. They have that that deal with Microsoft. This is in that utility as an AI play sort of theme here, Ed, with the stock up 7.2% today to get back above the 50-day line. It did have a gap down on earnings, so a little bit of a blemish on the chart here, but it is getting back up on its feet.
Yeah, and that is something to note, and that'll be something with the next stock as well. There was also some other news for the industry that came in, so it was a sort of a double whammy. But the other players bounced back, and this one didn't. So that is an issue. But it's come back. This is still one of the biggest performers of the year for the S&P 500. Above the 50-day line, you could argue if there's a tight trend line that you could probably have drawn as well. Yeah, and so certainly could have been bought today. It's working on a base here. You could also just wait to see if it sets up again. Relative strength line isn't at highs, but obviously it's had a really strong year, a couple of years. So it's not like this is a stock that's been lagging. Um, like a few of the mega caps are doing lately.
Mhm. Okay, well, it is back above the 50-day line, so we'll have to see if it can hold above 250 and that 50-day now that it has this strong day of outperformance. I think if you're going to buy something that is as volatile as this, doing it when it is close to one of those major moving averages, I think is something that makes a lot of sense if you're going to do it.
Yeah, and this is why
Okay,
you want to have a
go ahead.
watch list so you can try to buy it pretty quickly because it's already 5, 6% above the 50-day line. This is why you don't want to be looking around, hey, what's going on? And but just have it ready ahead of time and and have that watch list before the day starts.
Well said, Ed. Okay, let's also take a look at Mercado Libre in the retail internet group, along with Amazon. The stock up about a 0.5% today, but really it was yesterday that was impressive for the stock as it got back above its 50-day line. The gain on Monday coming in at 4.7%. Not only did it get back above the 50-day line, but this round psychological level of 2000 as well. So, like you were saying, just like with CEG, not a pretty reaction to earnings, but it did find support at a long term level, Ed.
Yeah, I actually took a position around this as it bounced off of that. So that's a full disclosure. That's obviously, you can't buy it off the 200-day line now. But I use that as because I did it for whatever reason. I explained it on IBD Live. But at this point, yeah,
Yeah,
getting back,
it's the stock's personality. So I
it's
think
the
that's
stock's
a
personality. It bounces
good
off of there.
analysis.
It comes to the bottom of the prior bases sometimes. And I felt that there was a risk, defined risk. Whereas, because if it went through the 200-day line, I would be getting out. Luckily, it worked for me. But I decided to do that. But in the here and now, on Monday, it got above the 50-day, 10-week line, or maybe that was on Friday. Um, and yeah, no, okay, I'm just trying to confusing it. And sorry, there was a tight trend line. If you exclude the 21, 22, and just sort of ignore that bump up, there was you could sort of draw a tight trend line. Not that you need to see there. And then today was trying to get above not such a tight trend line, and I don't know if it actually. So it was right around there.
Mhm.
So again, it'd be great if it could consolidate here a little bit, let moving averages catch up a little bit more, like the 21-day line. This is acting pretty
Mhm.
well here. Again, this is one that does have these big moves. It can make these big moves, but then suddenly can have these, let's be like pretty ugly earnings sell-offs. So
Right.
trying to buy them again, like CEG, trying to buy them near moving averages is probably a lot of the way to go in this case. So if the 21-day line could get above the 50-day line, that would be a
Mm.
real positive, I think, for this
Mhm.
stock.
Yeah, I love managing risk in that way when possible. All right, let's now take a look. We want to take a look at a couple of earnings movers after the bell, Ed. You got
Ye
anything for us?
Yeah, I got a few. CrowdStrike is one. I don't know exactly how all these earnings are doing, but I mean about what the results were. But CrowdStrike is just down a little bit. You could argue that a couple of days ago it cleared an alternate handle. There is a tiny little thing that was in there, so that's going to be a key area. Down a little bit. Workday. This was around a buy point, as I recall. W Day, and that one is down pretty sharply. So that was close to a buy point around 278, sort of in there. Nutanix, which was around an alternate entry around new highs, that one's bumping up. So that one is having a nice action. Uh, Autodesk, which I think was close to a buy point, there's a yeah, they're sort of right there at the top. There's sort of an alternate entry on top of things. Autodesk, that was extended, but that's down pretty sharply. Dell Technologies, which was just above a buy point. A lot of these things weren't showing up. But that one had been doing pretty well lately, but you never know with earnings. And one more is Ambarella. This one is a Vision, and this one's a Vision-based chip maker, and this one looks like a Vision AMBA,
Wow.
up 28%. I haven't seen the details, but that sort of, yeah, exactly. It sort of cleared a handle trend line right there, so it was already getting extended. So really strong action. But there's a lot of companies want to go home for Thanksgiving, so there was a lot of earnings reports tonight.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll have to check in on the action tomorrow morning on IBD Live, see how things are shaping up. And it seems like for Ambarella, if it's in that AI chip space, but it hasn't been a leader like some of the others that we've seen, although it has had outperformance versus the S&P 500 since this summer. But I think when you get an earnings gap like this, and it seems like the fundamentals are starting to turn around, okay, now it's a little bit more seriously on our radar, and let's see how it acts from here. Is it going to continue to be volatile, or does it develop a compelling setup for traders? Only time will tell. All right, Ed. Well, thank you so much, as always, for your analysis today. We always appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much.
And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. That is it from us for today, but we will be back with more tomorrow morning on IBD Live, as mentioned, investors.com/IBD Live for all the details on that. We will see you there, and then we'll also see you right back here tomorrow after the close.